All right, so behind me, I have a market. I have a market graph for iPhone 6s, okay? And I asked you, I think in questions 8 and 9, just to consider what would happen if the local Target decided to start selling iPhone 6s for $5 a pop. And then I also asked you, and I think question 9, to consider instead of $5 a pop, they started charging $5,000 a pop. And what would happen? Well, I hope, as you thought about that, at $5, I bet a whole lot of people are going to show up at that Target and walk out of there with an iPhone 6 for $5, right? Again, that's the only thing I'm changing. No strings attached. $5. That's really cheap iPhone 6. But $5,000 for an iPhone 6, I bet you don't see too many people going in that Target buying iPhone 6s, right? And I bet you see a whole lot of iPhone 6s available for sale on the shelves at $5,000 a pop. And the reason you think of that is because you kind of have an idea of what an appropriate price for an iPhone 6 is. And $5 isn't it, and $5,000 isn't it. It's probably somewhere, I don't know, 100, 200, somewhere in that range, right? And that would be our equilibrium price. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of show, I'm going to illustrate what is happening in those $5 and $5,000 examples behind me on the graph. Just don't forget the very simple scenario when something is super cheap and people rush in to buy it, and something's super expensive, they don't tend to buy it. Because it'll help you. Don't let the graph confuse you. All right? It's a simple concept. Kids get tripped up when we talk about it on the graph. So let's assume, just for the sake of saying, that the equilibrium price of an iPhone 6 is $100. It's just an easy number to use, so I'm going to label it like that. All right? It may or may not be $100. We can argue about that later. And let's also assume, for the sake of saying it, that the equilibrium quantity is 100 iPhones. Maybe it's 100 million iPhones, but we'll just use 100. So let's first talk about what's going on when the iPhone 6 is at $5. Notice $5 is way below down here. $5 is way down here, right? Remember what you told me, like everybody and their brother is going to show up at that Target to buy the iPhone 6. Yes, true. And you are talking about the demanders. You are talking about the quantity that they are demanding. So no curve is shifted here because I only changed the price. That's the only thing I changed. So I'm going to dot out here to my demand curve. Oh, sorry, I'm having trouble with my dotter. Okay? And lo and behold, my demand curve is way out there. And way out here, more than 100 folks are showing up, right? So let's say it's 200. 200 folks are showing up to buy iPhones. But something else is happening too. We tend to think like consumers and less like suppliers. If you're Target and you're selling iPhone 6s for $5, are you really interested in selling iPhone 6s for $5? Probably not. Probably not. So you notice what happens to your quantity of supply of iPhone 6s? Well, we dotted over. Look right here. We hit our supply curve at $5. That's way, way less here. So this is like how many they're throwing out on the shelves. Let's call it, I don't know, let's call it 25. Right? So you got 200 people showing up to buy them, the quantity demanded. So let's write this down here. At $5, your quantity demanded equals 200, but your quantity supplied is 25. That makes for a difference of 175. So what is this? 175 what? Well, you could think of it as 175 consumers that aren't going to get iPhone 6s. You could think of it as 175 iPhone 6s that could have been sold at $5 that aren't getting sold. Or you could just think of this as a shortage of iPhones. There are not enough iPhones to There are not enough iPhones to go out to all those grubby little grubbers that people want to smash up those iPhone 6s. There's not enough to go around. So we have a shortage of iPhones. Now, I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to make it $5,000. I want you to think for a second. What's going to happen to my graph behind me when I change this around and go to $5,000 as opposed to $5 for the iPhone 6? Consider it and then check out the next video.